Brandon, how are you?
Uh, a little rough day, but all good.
Little rough. Hold on 1 second. Give me 1 sec. The day from the beginning is going to be a happy day, but today is not that day. Anyway, it should be fine now. Why are you having a rough day? What's going on?
I mean, nothing critical. I do sales, and I was closing something that was pretty good for me, and then a customer was like, well, sometimes people like to make stuff up in their head. Long story short, that I never said to them, and at the end they go, "Wait, what about this?" And I'm like, "What?"
Hmm.
So they just left. After I saw them 3 different times today because they had to go measure stuff at their house and everything, and then they left. So maybe they'll be back, maybe not.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing what you're selling?
Oh yeah, I mean, I just sell outdoor kitchens. So they're like
Okay.
modular kitchens, so you don't need
Hmm.
permits and stuff like that. It's technically patio furniture, but it's pretty nice stuff. You could, yeah,
Well, I'm kind of interested now. That's cool.
yeah. It's called
How long have you been
Paradise
doing that?
Grills. Not long. I've been doing sales for like, I mean, I'm pretty young, but I've been doing sales for a little over for like a year and a half. So I just switched my old retail job to this place like a month ago.
Okay. Well, we have a global sales executive here. Maybe he can give you a couple of advice.
Maybe.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, who's the global sales executive here?
Well, I sent him an invite if he wants to come up. He's the global top sales executive of his company. Anyway, all right, let's look through the data real quick. Tesla down 1%, Dow Jones down 0.6, Nasdaq flat on the back of 3.7% increase in Nvidia, S&P 500 flat, Russell 2000 down 0.7%. Oil stocks are down quite a bit today on the back of 4% drop in crude oil prices. That's incredible. 4% drop in crude oil prices today. After the ISM manufacturing index figure for May came in lower than expected, 48.7, indicating a contraction for the manufacturing sector. This is for May. Lower than the expected 49, lower than the prior 49. Construction spending was also negative for April, and S&P Global US Manufacturing PMI final was 51.3. This data led to a big drop in yields as well. 11 basis point yields in 5 and 10-year and 30-year treasuries. Amazing. Well, looks like West Hicks is. I'm talking about West Hicks, by the way. Looks like he's busy. I mean, I was told 99% of sales is just wheel spinning.
Yeah,
But
pretty
I know it's
much. I mean, most
frustrating for you.
people, depending on what it is, like mine, it's a little different. What I used to do, if somebody said, "Okay, I'll be back," you'll never see them ever again for the rest of your life. If this is a little bit different because this is kind of like a much larger purchase. That so like some of the stuff is anywhere from like like $10,000 to $100,000 what I'm doing. So people want to you have to measure things, but there's no returns. It's like final sales. So once you sign that paper 17 times, that's it.
Hmm. Um, are you seeing any trends in your? How many salespeople in your company? Are you seeing any trends in terms of kind of sales strength? Because you said modular kitchen equipment for outdoors, which is home improvement projects, and home improvement projects can actually be predictive of the economy.
Yeah, so we're doing pretty well. I'm in Florida, but overall, I think the company's been growing. We have like 50 locations around the country. There's only 3 people in my store. There's like 4 in some other ones. So it's not many of us. It's kind of like small. But I'll tell you what I was doing in retail before, like TVs and furniture and audio. That like fell off a cliff, like a cliff that was on a cliff that was on a cliff, just completely died.
What exactly fell off a cliff? TV, audio equipment?
Yeah. So
Why do you think
so
that
I
is?
worked. I don't know. I don't know if it was. I don't know if it's global. I don't know if it's trends like that. I don't know if it's. I don't know if it's retail in general or if it's competition like Amazon. One of the big things is this: a lot of that TV and audio equipment and stuff like that and furniture has actually deflated a lot. So most of this, like you used to have to spend $3,000 if you wanted like a basic TV. Now people come in and they're like $3,000 for like a really nice TV or $100 for a really bad TV, and they're like, I want the really bad TV because the TV is a TV. So people have more money to spend in other parts of the economy, maybe because stuff like that is much cheaper now. But it didn't help me.
All right. We'll talk more about that later. Omar, how are you?
Hey, doing good.
Um, did you buy GameStop calls?
No, I wasn't able to get in, unfortunately. I tried to buy in at 20 last night in the overnight markets, but it had already got shut down. So
Can
great
you
day
buy
to
call
be.
options on overnight markets? Just
I
shares,
don't
right?
think so. You can only buy shares.
What was shut down? What do you mean shut? Oh, the overnight, they have hours? I thought it was 24/7 trading.
It is 24/7, but because of this GameStop thing that keeps happening, their overnight trading partner, the backer who's essentially providing the trading service, has instituted a rule where it can't go 20% above or below the last market price in overnight trading.
Oh
So
my
once it
God.
gets to 20%, it stops.
Yeah, that's amazing. Man, this one guy is making the markets look like a fucking fool. It's crazy.
Yeah, pretty awesome. Sounds like there's going to be a dumb money too.
Yeah, I mean, he probably made hundreds of millions of dollars today, right?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
incredible.
think someone said his $180 million of calls are worth like 500 million or something. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is. Do you think he's acting alone?
I'm sure lots of people have talked to him about potential strategies or things he could do. Obviously, his notoriety kind of puts him in a unique position to move the market on this stock.
But do you think there is, I mean, this is pure speculation, obviously, but how likely do you think it is that there's coordinated trading going on? Which I don't know if that's legal.
I don't think you really need to coordinate it. Just post a meme on X and everyone will just do it.
Hmm. Yeah, amazing. Just throw out your DCF models, man. You know, go back to college, unlearn everything on discounted cash flow, and learn how to make memes. That is a trick to the stock market. Wayfarer.
Hi, Yaman and Omar. I have a quick question on a video I saw, I think yesterday. One of the U.S. congressman was asking how much energy does the U.S. currently consume. I think it was the energy commissioner was not able to answer that it was 4 terawatt per year, and that according to the congressman, I don't know, maybe he's a senator, that he pointed out that there was no enough energy to go around for the plan by 2030 for the U.S. for the plan that the U.S. has set out in terms of EVs by 2030. Have you guys discussed this or any comments on this one?
Omar.
No, I haven't heard of what he's talking about yet.
I can try to find it, but it's probably a recent one. Let me try to find it, and I can share it on the message.
I mean, I can't, like, just the fact that you can't put panels on your roof and a stationary storage, and you don't need any of that. It kind of alone makes that statement ridiculous, though, don't you think, Wayfarer? $4 trillion kilowatt hours, right?
4 trillion. Four terawatt hour. 4 terawatt. Actually, it's just not hour. I think it's a power.
Well, I'm
unit,
looking
right?
at
4 terawatt
Well, you said
Per year.
energy. You said energy, and I'm looking at
Per
the
year.
frequently asked question. Okay, I got you. So 4 terawatt can't be per year, right? So 4 terawatt hours then. 4 trillion kilowatt hours.
4
I'm
terawatt
looking at
hour.
the
No, 4
EIA.
terawatt. Mhm.
I'm looking at the EIA frequently asked questions. What is US electricity generation by energy source? Total, all sources, 4.178 billion kilowatt hours. So 4 trillion kilowatt hours. Electricity generation total.
So the point was, I think on the numbers, we can always go back and verify. But the point was that there was no plan in place to actually provide the energy that was needed.
Okay, do you have a question for us?
Yeah, it's kind of a question, right? Is that's right? How do we see it as Tesla is pushing on the EV sector, but if that's going to be a problem down the road, so that's a blocker, right? So that's kind of a question too.
No, it sounds like you're making a statement. I don't think you're asking a question.
Okay. I thought it was a question. My bad.
John Lee?
Yeah, we should really disambiguate energy and power, because it's not even clear whether he was talking about energy or power. And it's, what happens in 4 or 5 years in this renewable energy power has always been wrong. So
Yeah. Think Flexity.
Yeah, man. What you were saying about the unit was right. It was 4.5 petawatt per hour, not terawatt per hour. He was wrong.
Okay. All right, no updates on 12.4. No updates on Cybertruck, right? We talked extensively last night about the upcoming votes. I think maybe one material thing that happened this morning is Atlanta Fed GDP Now model dropped their estimate from 3.5% annualized growth rate for Q2 to now 1.8%. So that's a major shift in the estimate for the economy's growth rate in Q2. In response, yields are down double digits across the curve today. So hopefully that will reduce all the loan rates. Wes Hicks, how are you?
Hey, Yaman, I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Good. Do you have any advice for Brandon?
I have a lot of advice. I don't know what he may want or need, but yeah, we could do a little sales 101. And I heard that. I had a call come in, so I had to jump real quick. And so just came back. So I don't know what I missed since you mentioned that, if anything.
Yeah, he's in the audience. We can bring him up.
Sounds like he's already got some success behind him. So that's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you familiar with a technique called feel, felt, found?
No.
You can look it up when you want. I don't want to bore you and your audience through it, but it's a really great technique for kind of turning somebody around that you can use it kind of in your own personal life with a girlfriend or with somebody else. It's pretty slick. Or objection handling in general is really almost
Feel, felt, found.
Feel, felt, found. I bet if you ask your
Let's see.
audience right now to
Is it
raise their hand.
communication strategy used in sales to help build rapport and overcome objections without challenging a prospect's beliefs. It's a 3-step technique that involves empathizing with a prospect, sharing a relatable story, and showing how a product or service can help. 1, feel. Express that you understand how the prospect feels. 2, felt. Share a story or example of how someone else felt the same way before using the product or service. 3, found. Explain how that person found the benefit or solution by using the product or service. Interesting.
Yeah, I bet if you maybe we can ask the audience to raise their hand if they've heard this technique before. It's quite popular. I'd be interested if how many people might raise their hand if they've heard that technique.
Sure. Give us an emoji if you've heard, feel, felt, found before. In the meantime, Danny.
Hello. Do you guys think Tesla will increase revenue from car sales, or do you think the revenue will mostly come from software, robotaxi? Because Tesla is way behind, for example, Ford in revenue. So are they still expanding? For example, I went to a trip to Sarajevo, and there's Ford dealerships here, but there's like no Tesla. So I think they have more room for growth there that I'm not sure if we're thinking about.
Omar, do you think vehicle sales will continue to grow in the coming years?
Yes. You said you went to Sarajevo? Where is that exactly?
Yeah, exactly. It's not even part of the EU, and there's a bunch of countries, I think, that Tesla may not be selling already that Ford is, because they had so much time. So I wonder if Tesla has a strategy, like they want to keep expanding to such countries, like emerging economies. Or do you think they'll do software?
Where is that country? In
Bosnia,
Eastern
in
Europe? Europe? Oh. Well,
Yeah, right next
yeah,
to
I mean,
Croatia.
I think there definitely are opportunities to expand to new countries, but expanding into a new country requires a certain amount of investment. You want to make sure that there's showrooms, you want to make sure that there's service centers, you want to make sure that there's superchargers so that everybody has a good experience and that the car's localized to the country, the maps work on that country's roads, and everybody gets a great, sort of Tesla experience. So it is a little bit of a capital investment, a significant capital investment to go into more and more countries. They are expanding to more and more countries over time, but you really want to pick the markets where you think there's a lot of opportunity to sell a lot of cars and where the infrastructure is ready. For example, people have the ability to install a charger at home. People have income to be able to afford the cars, those types of things. And then at that point, they can, start to expand into the market. So it'll take time to get into every car market in the world, but they're adding countries every year.
Thanks, Omar. Elon Musk no longer following Jan LeCun. Is it LeCun or LeCun?
I think LeCun. I'm not sure. I think it's LeCun. Yeah.
Man, the guy seems obsessed with Elon and Tesla and XAI right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's all competition, right? They're all eating from the same basket. Silicon Valley is a relatively small place, right? You can be down in Mountain View or up in Menlo Park or wherever Facebook's offices are, or up in San Francisco with OpenAI and XAI, and they're all competing with each other for talent. They're all fighting with each other for resources, for GPUs, for engineers. They're all poaching from each other, and this raise by XAI and obviously the work that Tesla's been doing as well as Neuralink. They're really stealing a lot of engineers. A lot of people want to go to XAI, especially because they love the idea of getting equity in a new startup. That's how you really get rich. And like you almost need to have that type of exit equity to be able to like afford a house in Silicon Valley. Otherwise, you have to leave eventually. So people love that. And you're not going to get that from Meta. You're not going to get that from Google. I mean, they can make you obviously a very sizable options package that's going to have, $350,000 to $500,000 salary, tons of incentive options for their stock, which is liquid and publicly traded. But you don't find that equity appreciation that you find in a startup at a big company.
Thank you. All right, we had a question. So every morning I put out a reminder for the space, and I ask people to submit their questions in the reply. So we had a question about Elon's post, given the pace of technology improvement up in the top. It's not worth sinking 1 gigawatts of power into H100. The XAI 100,000 H100 liquid cooled training cluster will be online in a few months. Next big step would probably be 300,000 B200s with CX8 networking next summer. And this was in a response to a poll who is likely to build the first 1 million H100 GPUs equivalent data center. And the options were Meta, OpenAI, Google, and X. My first takeaway from looking at that poll is that Tesla is on the list. How do you think about this and Elon's reply, Omar?
Yeah, I mean, sounds pretty crazy. The B200s have about, 4 times the performance as the H100s. So you're really talking about a cluster that has the performance of over 1 million H100s. It's really just, crazy how fast these compute clusters are evolving. I would think that Tesla was probably actually larger right now, but then somebody from XAI said, "Come build the largest compute cluster in the world." So that's kind of interesting. You'd think that Tesla also having 100,000 NVIDIA systems and their own dojo would probably have more compute overall, but um, maybe XAI is building an even bigger cluster.
So would XAI have the chips and Tesla, if needed, beyond what Tesla already owns, pay XAI for use of those GPUs? How would that work?
I don't think so. I think Tesla would probably have their own GPUs. I think that what XAI is doing is really for just trying to build a really state of the art model, really take these language models to the next level, even beyond really the language model moniker, really building something that could be useful for science, could be useful for discovery, really powerful state of the art AI. And they want to give everybody a ton of compute budget to try what they want. I mean, this is a big part of recruiting too, is how much compute am I going to have? You don't want to go to some small startup where it's like you've got one H100 to share with, the whole team. Ideally, you want to go to a place where they can afford to give you a lot of compute. Your OpenAIs, your Teslas, your Meta, your Google, and your XAI. So it's a big part of recruiting really to say, hey, come here. You obviously can't afford to buy NVIDIA cluster yourself. But if you join one of these big companies, then in addition to getting paid, you also get to use the cluster to do your work.
Wessex.
Yeah, just thinking this through, I realize more compute is better, obviously, and we could probably, or it'd be great if we could buy as much as possible. But I'm wondering, Omar, do you think at least for full self-driving, not necessarily Optimus, do you think that we're kind of within reach of having enough compute to kind of not necessarily solve it, but get it to a point that it's working properly. We can deploy the robotaxi network, and then we're in a state of continuous refinement? Or do you think that accumulating massive compute is required to complete FSD and robotaxi?
Yeah, the more compute you have, the better. The faster you solve FSD. So call Jensen and say, Jensen, how many H100s can you give me, and how many H200s, and how many B100s and B200s? And whatever he says, say, good, I want twice that number. And send them to us, we'll take delivery. And just build up as much compute as you possibly can. That's how they'll solve self-driving. That's how they'll make it much, much safer than human. And that's how they'll solve the robotics challenge as well.
Isn't there a point though that we solve it, and therefore we can kind of at least keep what we have, not necessarily accumulate more? And that's why I'm wondering if we might be within reach, at least for FSD, not necessarily Optimus, because I'm assuming we're gonna, put a lot of, shift a lot of our compute over to Optimus once we have full self-driving up to a certain level.
No, I mean, you're maybe talking about very far into the future, but generally, as people are using this technology more and more, you're going to want to train more models. You're going to want to train them faster. You're going to have more data to process. So it really is an exponential or hyper exponential process because you keep buying these new systems, but at the same time, the systems themselves are actually getting more powerful. The Blackwell's 4 times the performance of Grace Hopper in some cases. So you're now buying more B200s and H100s, but at the same time, they're also adding more performance. And the more compute power you train at these models, the better they get. The bigger models you can train in a shorter amount of time, the more you can do. So really what you're getting at is there a point of diminishing returns? And are we approaching this point of diminishing returns where we don't need any more massive compute clusters? And the answer is no, not yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. And what we figured out in AI is methods that scale with compute work way better than anything else that we come up with, right? There's sort of the bitter lesson as they talk about.
Tommy. Tommy, you may unmute yourself and go ahead. Okay, while Tommy figures the unmute button out, Omar, what do you think this means for demand for NVIDIA? Lots of mega tech, big tech
I have a question. Do you know? So I enjoy my dirt bike here in Canada. I drive a dirt bike, a Yamaha. Do you know if Elon Musk will come with a dirt bike?
No. But the ATV, maybe. I think Tesla's working on. They announced the ATV. I don't know if they're going to focus on it anytime soon. Yeah, Elon clarified years ago that Tesla doesn't plan on doing motorcycles because he believes they're unsafe. And so no motorcycles, no Tesla motorcycles anytime soon, if ever. Big tech companies are announcing growth in Capex, capital expenditures for these chips. To varying degrees, though. I think Microsoft and Amazon appear to be a bit more aggressive with their Capex spend. Whereas Meta, I think, is slowing down a little bit, their growth. We don't have do we have a figure from Tesla that they plan to spend X billion dollars for the next 12 months on AI chips?
I think maybe 4 billion or something like that. They spent $1 billion in the first quarter, so it could
Right.
be, I think, 2 to 4 billion.
Okay.
And then they've got their own dojo program as well.
Yep. It's Inflexity.
Yeah, I don't know about Tesla, but they didn't guide to anything specific. But about Meta, Meta actually accelerated its capex for AI by a few billion. Not much, but just a few billion.
Yeah, my understanding for Meta was that they're going to be. Yeah, I'll check my figures on that. Danny.
Yeah, so the better a model gets, so the better FSD gets, the more compute it needs to get even better. So is it safe to assume that even in a couple of years, it's not like they can really give compute to Optimus program? Like maybe they can give a little bit, so Optimus does some specific tasks like laundry, but nothing so generic, maybe? Like, could we assume that, or do they have bigger plans, you think?
Omar.
Sorry, what was the question? I was reading something.
Yeah, Danny, try again with, and just stick to the guidelines, which is, or stick to the rule, really. It's not a guideline. 10 words and start with a question word. Take your time to formulate your question. 10 words, start with a question word.
Do you think Optimus will be focusing on like specific tasks like laundry for the next several years? Because FSD is taking up all the compute.
I mean, no. I think Optimus is designed to be a general purpose robot. You should be able to talk to it just like a person. It should be better than a person that you can hire for $15 an hour. You should be able to say, walk over here, do this, take a picture of me, pick up those dishes and be careful and put them in the dishwasher. Go walk around my kids' rooms, pick up any clothes off the floor and put them in the laundry machine. Um, you know, open the window at 3 o'clock, whatever you tell it to do, it should be able to do it. Now,
Do you think
obviously, go
do you
ahead.
think the Optimus team is competing with the FSD team for training compute?
Well, a lot of the systems that are actually overlapping, like they've talked about using the same occupancy network for both Optimus and the cars. A lot of things are similar on the system between FSD and the cars, but obviously Optimus has its own model. So there's no doubt that the FSD team is getting priority over Optimus right now, but Optimus team is still getting a lot of compute, more than they need. They don't really need to, you know, have a huge time deadline on training a huge model to huge accuracy. They're really at the point right now where they're sort of playing with different model architectures and trying to figure out what works, trying to figure out what the software ecosystem of Optimus even looks like. So I think compute is much less of a constraint now than it was. Maybe in the past when they only had, let's say, 15,000 H100s, but now they've got over 40,000. They're going to have over 85,000 by the end of the year. I've heard they have over 100,000 on order over the next 12 months. So computing is becoming less and less of a constraint, and Dojo is also in mass production. I'm sure they can use all the Dojo compute they want, definitely, and they definitely probably have more of a compute budget than, say, Figure AI or some of the other humanoid robotics companies out there for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Inflexity, I stand corrected. I think you're right. Meta boosted its full-year capex range to $35 to $40 billion, pointing to 33% year-over-year growth and $4 billion more than previously anticipated to build out AI infrastructure and support its internal AI roadmap. Meta's Q1 capex was only $6.7 billion, implying that the bulk of this spend will hit in the second half of the year, possibly accelerating a 20% quarter-over-quarter rate and exiting 2024 about the $11 billion range. Alphabet's capex rose 91% year-over-year to $12 billion in Q1. Insane. And Microsoft, $14 billion in Q1. Okay. Switching back to Tesla. Omar, I see in one of your posts your Model S trade-in offer from Tesla expired May 25. You got your new one today, and it's $5,200 less. Actually, before we switch topics, let's go to Just for Fun. I think he might have something to say about what we were just talking about. Just for Fun, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering for you or Omar or Machine, thoughts on the comment I think Devin D. Kim, an employee at XAI, posted saying future models will take over 100x the compute of current models to train. Just sort of implications for the spend and NVIDIA.
Omar?
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, Just for Fun. The thing is, like, people can make announcements. A lot of companies made announcements about how many EVs they're going to produce, how many EVs they're going to add to their fleet and everything. But these are just announcements. These are plans and wishes and dreams. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come to fruition. It's going to depend on the, then conditions. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess the question is more, do you guys believe that that is the trend, that it's going to be this sort of continuous exponential curve, or is it going to be leveling off?
Of CapEx spend on chips, is that the question?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be some sort of exponential into the infinity.
I mean, you can think of it as essentially being a function of revenue. So it's going to start off a little bit ahead of revenue, but if it works as intended, then revenue and earnings skyrocket. And then some portion of that goes back into expanding the compute budget. So really, like, the thing you are really banking on here is Moore's Law, right? So Moore's Law, Gordon Moore, one of the founders of Intel, he noticed that the amount of transistors you could fit on a wafer doubled roughly every, I think 18 or 24 months. I forgot what exactly it was. And that's proved to be true over the years, right? Computers get more and more dense in terms of the chips. They get more and more powerful. And that's continued to be true for decades and decades. Every year, someone comes up with a more powerful chip. We keep coming up with ways to make these chips smaller, make the transistors smaller so the chips get faster, make them more and more powerful. And if you just sort of bank on that, it can be extremely powerful. Then you're not doing the work, essentially. You're just letting sort of computation do the work. So I commented on this Spaces thread. If you push the thing in the bottom right, you can see the comment thread with the bitter lesson by Rich Sutton, where he says the biggest lesson that can be read from 70 years in AI research is that general methods that leverage computation are ultimately the most effective, and by a large margin. The ultimate reason for this is Moore's Law, or rather its generalization of the continued exponentially falling cost per unit of computation. Most AI research has been conducted as if the computation available to the agent were constant, but over a slightly longer time than a typical research project, massively more computation inevitably becomes available. Seeking an improvement that makes a difference in the shorter term, researchers seek to leverage their human knowledge of the domain, but the only thing that matters in the long run is leveraging computation. So essentially, what this means is the cost of compute is falling like a rock. You don't necessarily see it because the NVIDIA Blackwell is, 40,000, and the Grace Hopper DGX H100 was also 40,000. But when you look at the fact that it's 4 times more powerful, the price per unit of computation has essentially fallen by 75%. So not only are you buying more compute, but you're also getting more compute for your buck, if that makes sense. I think there is some point of sort of diminishing returns, maybe, but so far what we're seeing in AI is that all of the progress in AI has just come from leveraging increasing scale of computation. And when you just come up with a machine learning system that just leverages the scale of computation, and you just realize that that's just going to get bigger and bigger exponentially over time, those methods just get better for free, right? You don't have to have a new idea. You don't need to invent anything. You just keep expanding the compute and the thing just keeps getting smarter.
Just for fun, does that answer your question?
That was definitely helpful. That's good. Thanks.
Are you an NVIDIA investor?
Yeah, I very luckily had a friend years ago, very smart guy. He's like probably partially autistic, who said the most obvious trade, this was probably in 2017, said the most obvious trade was NVIDIA for AI, and threw a little money in back then, so it's done pretty well.
What percent of your, you don't have to answer these questions, but what percent of your portfolio is in NVIDIA versus Tesla?
So currently it's pretty close now, just because of how the two stocks have traded. But Tesla was originally definitely higher.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, Omar, back to the Model S tweet that you had. Trade-in value, $1,500 less today versus May 20, or last week, I guess. Because Tesla couldn't deliver Model 3 performance fast enough, I now have to pay $5,200 more. I guess I can try and sell it somewhere else, but they sent me this text like, pick a delivery date or lose your car, even though when I tried before it said, no delivery dates available. So I go back and it has only one option, June 6th. So not much time to try and find a better deal to sell the S. Alternatively, maybe I could take FSD off the order and then the car is still less than the trade-in. Not a great buying experience. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I got the Model 3 Performance. I'm pretty excited. I'm going to pick it up on June 6th. I set the delivery date. But, so I went and placed the order last month for the Model 3 Performance and did everything. So Tesla has a trade-in service where you can trade in your old car, whether it's a Tesla or anything else, and you can get a new car. And I've never actually used their trade-in service before because it's known to give you a lower value than you can get elsewhere. For example, people mention CarMax or, selling privately or something like that. But this time I said, let me just do the Tesla trade-in. If I'm not paying anything for the car, then it doesn't really matter. I'll just, give it to them. It'll be easy. I don't have to go through the hassle of selling the car. So I went and did the Tesla trade-in, and they gave me a trade-in value of about $70,000. And I said, okay, that sounds good. And they said, all right, your trade-in offer expires May 25th. So then I was waiting, and Tesla wasn't able to deliver me the Model 3 Performance until just recently they gave me a VIN. And then they said, all right, set your delivery date. So I go in and say, pick a delivery date. And it goes, we're sorry, there are no delivery dates available. And I'm like, okay, well, then why'd you ask me to pick a delivery date? Then they text me in the morning and they go, okay, you need to pick a delivery date or you're going to lose your car. I'm like, okay, well, I tried multiple times and you told me there were none. So then I went into the thing and it said, you got one option, June 6th. And I'm like, okay, that's not necessarily the most convenient day. I'm in LA right now. And my mom's birthday's on June 4th. I thought I'd stay here and then, go back and do the thing in the Bay Area. But, okay, so now I kind of have to do a June 6th. You're kind of, really making this decision for me. And then the trade in offer hadn't come in at that point. It came in after that. And then it was, $5,000 less. So the car went from them giving me back $2,000, essentially being free, to me having to give them $2,000. So I'm like, all right, that's kind of lame. And I could, maybe just take off FSD on the car. And then I would save $8,000. And then, they'd be giving me back $6,000. I could still kind of do the trade for free, at least from my perspective, in the sense that I don't have to outlay any cash for it. But then I have to pay FSD for $99 a month. But, I could do that out of the $6,000. So probably what I'm going to do, I scheduled an appointment with CarMax, or maybe I'll try and sell it private party. If anyone wants a Model S that's hardware 4 and has Steam and has FSD, DM me, I'll sell it to you. But yeah, basically Tesla trade-ins don't give you the best value. And I have a hard time believing my car decreased in value in 5,000 in a month, but I mean, maybe it did. Expensive cars do tend to depreciate, but I have a feeling I can probably get a better value elsewhere. So the reason I'm just sharing this is most people, if they were buying a car and, had this type of experience, they'd probably just cancel the order. Like most people probably wouldn't even say, okay, let me go try and find a better value for my car or whatever. I think a lot of people would probably kind of feel just ripped off. So maybe there's some things Tesla could do there. I don't know if layoffs impacted the delivery timing or anything, or um, if there's anything else they can do. But yeah, just kind of making sure it's a really smooth delivery experience overall. I think their delivery experience does stand out from buying from a dealership. You can order online. It's a really smooth, easy process. When you do your delivery, it's usually just in and out. So it's always been like a really great ordering process, but um, you want to make sure that the picking the delivery date experience is good, and the trade-in experience is good. Maybe one thing I would recommend is partnering with CarMax and partnering with others where you could actually maybe get several trade-in values, not just Tesla's partner, but maybe other options as well. Or if nothing else, maybe just some text to, you know, go try here to sell your car or whatever. Although, maybe they might try and sell them a car too. So there's probably some stuff there that could be ironed out, but I'm not going to obviously cancel my Model 3 performance order. I'm just gonna have to find somewhere else to sell my Model S rather than trading it into Tesla.
All right, thank you. Do we know how many people in total got laid off?
10 to 20%.
Yeah, that's a wide range though. Do you expect to see such kind of bottlenecks in deliveries and service for the rest of 2024 with these layoffs?
I don't know. I haven't had any experience since the layoffs. This is my first delivery experience, and I'll continue to share what I'm seeing. But
Mhm.
delivering a car isn't that hard. Just get the car there, let me pick it up. Um, so I expect them to adjust. There may be some temporary sort of setbacks. They may temporarily
Mhm.
be a little bit short staffed or something like that, but then they're going to institute automations, figure out ways to do things more efficiently, maybe rehire some people if necessary. And I'm sure, they'll make sure the customer experience is great because honestly, they're going to have a lot of these Model 3 performances to deliver and a lot of Cybertrucks to deliver in the coming quarters. So um, they better make sure everything is running smoothly.
Mhm. Yoda?
Omar, did you end up getting black or what color?
I got the stealth gray. That's the only color that Joe Biden will let me get and qualify for the tax credit.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I
fun.
had a different experience, I guess, at the Tesla dealership or showroom, what have you. I had a little bit of a paint chip on multi-coat red, and the service agent was kind enough to help me kind of repair the little chips with the Tesla paint. They did seem to be a little bit understaffed now that you mention it, though. So yeah, there's maybe some layoff impact there.
Someone from Tesla just DM me. Saw your post. I'm on it.
Oh, that's good. um, yeah, I mean, if the economy is slowing down as we expect, and some of these stocks indicate, like for example, today's oil price drop of 4% is abnormal. It's abnormal. The yields are down 10, 11 basis points. That's a big move. ISM manufacturing index coming in lower than expected. Construction spending coming in negative, lower than expected. These are all kind of indications that the economy is slowing down very rapidly here. So this is all in line with some of the discussions we have in macro analyst. And Atlanta GDP now is showing like the growth rate estimated for Q2 halved in 2 weeks. That is not normal. So I think the future will put Elon's actions today into better context.
I think if the economy was better, say a couple years ago, Omar would have gotten ultra red. And I don't mean that as a joke, but Omar, would would the Fed credit been as much of a deal maker or breaker? When it was a couple years ago.
You know, I really like the ultra red, but it's not worth $10,000. I really like it, but I don't like it as much as I like $10,000. And the stealth gray is a good color. It looks really good. So it's not like, oh my god, I have to drive a stealth gray Model 3 Performance. This is so horrible. I would rather have the ultra red. I mean, this EV tax credit is horrible. It was a backhanded slap in the face of the EV industry. Because here Tesla has, a $2,000 option they sell. How much does the paint cost? It doesn't cost $2,000. This option is pure margin for them. It allows them to sell the car at a higher ASP by having options like white seats and ultra red and wheels and whatever else they can think of. But the government's put a price cap. So people can't buy these things. They have to buy the cheapest car if they want to qualify for the tax credit. So this is why, I won't shed a tear if the tax credit goes away. But as it exists right now, I do want to take advantage of it. I think my income last year qualifies me to do it, and I'm going to take advantage of it. So this is my first time using the point of sale credit system. It's really great. They just take the 7,500 right off the top, and it's a great reason to get a Model 3 Performance. It actually makes it cheaper than the long range. But I know there's going to be a lot of stealth gray Model 3 Performances around California, the way this tax credit is structured, which is just kind of, when the government gets involved, things always get stupid.
Hey Yoda, your recent purchase of Nvidia shares is playing out well for you so far. Are you continuing to buy?
Um, no, I'm just kind of holding on. I think yeah, like I said, like less than 5 or 4 trading days now to the split. I think the stock is gonna continue go up, and my coffee bet is that by Monday next week, which is a week from now, uh, Nvidia will be worth more than Apple.
A week from now, man, you are the most aggressive coffee bet person that I've ever seen, I think. And it's not like sometimes people come in their first coffee bets, they're like flinging without aiming. But you obviously are experienced and very smart and everything, but you're very aggressive with your coffee bets. Let me just see here. Nvidia stock market cap $2.8 billion. Apple 2.97.
I don't think I'm aggressive. The only thing that's a bit of a
Well, you're
caveat
the
is
only one on earth right now that expects or willing to do a coffee bet on driverless robotaxis on 8.8.
yeah, that's another topic. But I think for Nvidia, barring any major announcements from Apple, obviously then would lift their valuation. Uh, then I think Monday next week, right here on Spaces, Tesla Live, uh, I'll be collecting my coffee bet.
You're basically predicting a 5% outperformance of Nvidia stock versus Apple in the next 4 days, business days. If anybody wants to take Yoda on that coffee bet, you're welcome to request to speak and take him up on it. When is Apple's event?
I think Umar would know, but I think it's June 10th is the start of the WWDC, right?
Yeah, June 10th. Wow. What do you know that we don't?
Well, Nvidia's stock is splitting on that day, isn't it? June 10th?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so technically it doesn't make a difference, but there's obviously a cohort of investors who does believe that that matters when a stock splits. And so for Nvidia to go up 6% from now till then doesn't feel like a stretch. I mean, it went up 4 and change today. If anything, it could happen as early as Friday. It's just that then Monday is the when it takes effect, and when um, the investors can sort of buy at that lower absolute price point. Um, yeah, so
Okay. Gavin Baker says worldwide power limitations for data centers are going to drive massive refresh cycles for CPUs, networking, and storage. Can likely reclaim 30% of existing data center power for GPUs and other accelerators through this process. Omar, what do you make of that statement? To which Elon said, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how power is really becoming the limitation in these data centers, right? When you really get up to the scale we're talking about here, where you talk about hundreds of thousands of H100s, right? Or B100s or B200s. I mean, these things suck electricity like you cannot imagine. And when you have 100,000 of them or 200,000 of them or 300,000 of them, the power suck is obviously 300,000 times greater. And it's not really like web-based data centers where you can split up web-based data centers really well. So I can have a Google data center in Seattle and one in Oregon and one in California, and I can run the exact same code on the California servers and the other data centers, and you can split that up pretty well. But with AI training, you really need the compute clusters all in the same place, and you need them networked together at high speed because they're really dealing with petabytes of data, like massive, massive amounts of data that they need to be able to access really quickly and move in and out of the training chips. Otherwise, the training process is slower. So you really need co-location. So you have all these really power hungry chips and they have to be all in the same place. Now, if your electric grid doesn't support the level of power draw that you want to pull out of the grid, then you can't run that cluster. And in many cases, I mean, these electric grids do not move at the speed of tech. If you need a new interconnection for your data center, that can take years. You know, the permitting, actually getting an interconnection done, it's an extremely slow 20th century process. It was not made for a world where we're rebuilding our entire electric infrastructure. And so I think what you're going to see is there's actually going to be a demand to power the data centers self-sufficiently, like maybe like a small nuclear reactor or solar and wind. Anything that can offset the power load onto the grid actually helps you build out more compute capacity. So it's interesting just thinking about the role of Tesla Megapack and AutoBidder and Powerwall and the suite of energy solutions that Tesla's honed for a long time in potentially addressing this new market of data centers.
Yoda, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Elon mentioned this, right? So the constraint is going from compute to then energy. And I think a large reason that will be seen for why data center is converting its existing infrastructure to the new one being H200, Blackwell, and Rubin in the future is because there is a what Jensen calls an inflation on the energy requirement of compute when it comes to AI. And so they have to do the upgrade. Assuming they're delivering these AI services, they have to then do the upgrade in order to counter the inflation of energy. Jensen spoke about this at the Computex 2024, if for those who are interested in taking a look at his keynote.
Wessex.
Yeah, on a related point, about a week and a half ago on a Friday, there was a guy in here. He's a bear. His name is Klaus. He said he was going to direct message you some information about Tesla only having 10% of the grid scale utility market through the megapacks, which I thought sounded crazy because I don't know who, besides Siemens and another company, who's really out there. Did he ever send that to you?
No, well, nobody can DM me without me requesting, but he can always just leave it in the reply too, and I haven't seen that. Or he can just mention me on a tweet or whatever. And he probably meant on a global basis.
Yeah, he did, but I just don't see how we would only have 10% of global market share for grid scale utility, considering how new it is. But he said he was going to follow up directly.
It's not that new, and also China has quite a few players. I think Tesla will dominate in the US, but outside the US, it's going to be difficult to grow that business profitably, I think.
Well, I looked into it about a year ago, and there were really only two other players, and they were in partnership together, Siemens and another company, Fluent, maybe. I think they did a little partnership in Europe. I wasn't aware of anybody else. I knew BYD and stuff who were getting in, but I don't know that anybody's really, to my knowledge, has really manufactured and scaled these things to any degree. So that's why Klaus's comments seem kind of shocking to me.
Okay. Jimmy, I couldn't accept your request to speak, but I sent you an invite to speak, which seems to work better for some reason. But Wessex, it's not really important information. What's really important is 5-10 years down the line, what will be the market share, pricing, profit margins, etc. So even if he was right, I mean, Tesla obviously is production constrained right now. they haven't even started building mega packs in China. So it's not really that relevant. Just for fun.
Now, this is a little bit tangential, but on the topic of energy driven by AI, saying some of these leaders like Zuck and Altman and others have been talking about the rising energy needs. I've been wondering if gas ETFs would be a good play, but it seems like, looking at some of the top gas ETFs, they haven't moved much. And I'm just wondering if anyone happens to know kind of why that is. It's just, it's still too small of a part of the market, or they can't move quickly enough, or other reasons.
Omar?
Sorry, I was talking to the guy. What did you say?
The question is, do you recommend a natural gas investments like ETF, let's say?
Well, I guess
as it
In the short term, the United States is building out a lot of natural gas plants to serve increased power demand, and probably just when we talk about the growth in electric demand from EVs, heat pumps, data centers, that is short term going to be positive for natural gas too. So people have really been talking about the infrastructure play behind these data centers, networking, utilities, all the sort of downstream suppliers of these data centers. They're all making more money. So, in the short term, I think it could be a good investment. In the long term, I think that natural gas is just like it's replacing coal now, eventually going to be replaced by newer and better technologies like nuclear, solar, wind, and batteries that just continue to decline in cost. So, short term, I think it could do well. Long term, I think it's going to be disruptive.
just for fun.
Yeah, I'll just add that, I guess Omar didn't hear this, but when I looked at some of the ETFs, I thought that maybe they'd be at like all-time highs, but really looking at some of the leading gas ETFs, they're really not at like LTM highs. And so I don't know, maybe it's just like other parts of the market dynamics that make it, not a great investment at this time.
Okay. Let's see what else. I'm going through Omar's page live on YouTube in the meantime.
One interesting story that I did see out of Semi Analysis today, which is the best publication out there, I think, to follow all the developments that are happening with chips. And they've noticed that OpenAI is poaching a lot of chip talent from Google. And it's interesting because their partner Microsoft obviously has their own chips that they're doing, but they were saying that Microsoft is probably going to want to mark those up and sell them at a profit to OpenAI. So they're not really going to get the full cost benefit of potentially doing their own chip and have the level of control they would need to really make the chip suitable for the kinds of things that they want to do. So they're apparently building their own in-house chip team as well, probably for both training and inference. And that's really interesting. You mentioned they're not poaching from NVIDIA and AMD because they don't want to make those companies upset, given they've got a really great relationship with those companies. But since they're enemies with Google, they're apparently poaching heavily from the TPU team. And they acknowledge that the TPU, the Google TPU, is really the only successful system at scale to really replace NVIDIA. So that's a great accomplishment Google has done. And OpenAI looks like they're looking to replicate it.
Doesn't that slow down NVIDIA's revenue growth, all else equal?
It seems like it's part of a larger trend of everybody really getting into making their own training compute. But the question isn't really, does it? The answer is yes, of course it does. But the question is, what does that look like in terms of timing? When, if ever, are they able to actually get off NVIDIA? And what does NVIDIA have in the future compared to what they are able to put out? If they come up with their own chip and it's great, but NVIDIA has a chip that's 10 times better, they're probably still going to end up buying the NVIDIA chips as well.
Wessex. You know, Wes, somebody told me the other day that I put S's after certain words, and I looked into it. And one of the potential reasons, according to the AI tools I use, is if you're learning English as a second language, you might add S, you might end up adding S into words. And I was thinking, like, why could that be? And it's because that TH in certain words in English, the TH sound, your tongue is very much where it is, just a slightly more further ahead when you're saying S. So you're overcompensating as a second language to kind of create that TH sound when you're learning the language. So I was like, huh, that actually makes a lot of sense. But now with your name, I don't need to worry about that because you have an S in your first name and your last name, which is great.
All for your convenience.
Yeah, thank you.
How long have you been, have you been speaking English? How long have you been speaking English?
Yeah, so I actually started learning it in middle school because I went to middle school, high school that's founded by Americans in Turkey. But I would say 99% of the English I speak today, I learned after I came to US for college. But the thing is, I have actually noticed I add S when I'm saying my name. Because when I say my name, when I meet somebody, I say my name, people repeat it back to me with an S at the end, but I don't hear it when I say it, which is really interesting to me. So now it makes a lot of sense. Just because somebody replied with it the other day.
First name or last name?
I think it's the first. Yeah, I don't say my last name when I introduce myself, so it's got to be the first name.
Yamans. Okay.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
The guy I play pickleball with the most, my pickleball partner, if you will, he's from Turkey, and I talk about you a lot. You are a very effective communicator compared to him. I'm trying to help him along, but
How long has he been here?
He's only been here a couple years, on and off. He's back there right now, but he's here like 10 months out of the year, I believe, and he's picking it up. But I think he's also struggling with culture. So just a different world. Great guy.
Yeah. I always explain to people that when people come from Turkey here, they usually separate into two groups. One group hangs out with their own Turkish people, Turkish friends, eat Turkish food, speak Turkish, etc. And then the second group, they tried really hard to immerse themselves into the culture. And the second group obviously ends up speaking better English. I mean, that's just, Anyway, what was your question point?
I didn't have a question. I don't think I have my hand up.
Okay. All right. Toyota was found to have falsified data and skirted impact safety tests while applying to certify 7 past and current vehicles, a government investigation has found. Toyota submitted faulty data during pedestrian safety tests for 3 current models and used modified test vehicles during collision safety tests for 4 past models. The Japanese Transport Ministry said Monday. The company was among 5 companies, including Honda and Mazda, found to have problems with their safety certifications, according to the Bloomberg article. Omar, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of indicative of their culture. And you just kind of hear about these issues every week, it feels like, from different legacy auto manufacturers. Very different than Tesla's safety focused culture, where not only are they not slacking on things that they need to be doing, they're actually inventing new safety technologies that never existed before and pushing the state of the art forward. And you can see the results when you hear about those crashes on social media where someone drove off a cliff or got into some insane situation, flipped over multiple times, and just walked out without a scratch. So, one more reason not to buy a Toyota.
Right. It's amazing, like all the things that Tesla is accused of, we actually see it. The company's doing it and no one cares. Incredible. I was talking to somebody the other day who got an Audi e-tron, horrible car, and she just kept complaining about it, about the software and the hardware. I'm like, why didn't you get a Tesla? And after a little bit of digging, it turns out she just doesn't like Elon's tweets and stances or whatever. And I'm like, well, do you realize Audi is owned by Volkswagen, which is literally was founded by Hitler? And even today, they gas people, they gas monkeys. And just, she obviously didn't know any of that because it's not covered in the media because Volkswagen pays billions of dollars in ad money and everything. But even after the interesting part is, even after you tell them this, they ignore it. Amazing. And then after a little bit more digging, turns out that she listens to Kara Swisher's podcast frequently. So, well, that kind of explains it. That was the end of the date. Yoda?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know what year it's gonna be, but a few years down the line, it's quite possible that there will be more people on an annual basis who will be experiencing or having their first Tesla experience in a robo taxi than in a Tesla vehicle that they own. Because I think the riders count will eclipse the new vehicle's owners count at some point. I don't know what year that is though.
Well, would you like to make a guess? I thought you thought it was this year. No, I'm kidding. You predicted do you still believe we're going to get driverless robo taxis on 8/8?
As Omar laughs, my answer is still yes. And in fact, I think I have a guess of how this presentation on A8 will go down in 3 parts.
Okay, go ahead. Was this a teaser? Tell us about the 3 parts. Is there a movie coming out or
Well, I
something?
think,
Is it a
yeah,
trailer for your YouTube
there's
video?
no trailer. There's no trailer, but there's 3 parts. Part 1, I think a 2-seater robo-taxi vehicle will be unveiled, as everyone is obviously saying. However, the robotaxi service will also be launching, but operating in a very restricted area. Now, this will be very restricted, but then gradually expanding coverage as full self-driving technology iterates and improves, and regulatory approvals follow. On 8/8, they will also be launching the ride-hailing app, and they will provide a video demonstration of the end-to-end rider experience. I also think they'll be unveiling a variant version with steering wheels that people can pre-order, basically can purchase. Part 2 will be with the ride-hailing app developed and launched. Existing Tesla owners, so let's say if I have Model 3, Model Y, I can sign up to be a driver. Basically the same as a Uber driver, whereby there's qualifying requirements on my license, etc. The owners can add or remove their cars from the ride sharing network, the Tesla owned ride sharing network. So Uber drivers may migrate onto now the Tesla network if they have a Tesla. And owners have to be in the car, of course, as most of the driving is done outside of the initial restricted areas. And as FSD technology advances, the drivers will no longer be, needed, obviously, but that's down the road. And then part 3 to my movie, there'll be the one more thing where they'll show the Tesla van form factor, but production will, it's purely a concept unveiling with not a lot of details.
Omar, what do you think of that 3-part movie?
Well, I'm not sure where he's getting this from. I think that there's going to be a vehicle unveil. That's primarily what this is about. So we're going to see the robo-taxi vehicle. They're going to do a demo. And, obviously they're going to show it doesn't have steering wheel and pedals. They'll do a demo, maybe a demo of the app, show how it would work in a ride sharing capacity. But production of this vehicle, which uses the new unbox process, is not going to start until late 2025 or 2026. So it's going to be at least 12 to 18 months, if not 24 months, before we actually see them rolling out. And I expect you will be able to do pre-orders. There's not going to be a version with a steering wheel. There's not going to be a van, and there's no ride sharing service being launched that day. They may say, okay, here's some details about a ride sharing service. Maybe they plan to launch supervised, but maybe not. Maybe they'll give some details on the app or their plan. But this is just primarily going to be a vehicle unveil. So expect to see a vehicle unveiled, expect to see a demo. Don't expect to see any products launched. Expect to maybe be able to pay $99 and put a deposit down on one.
Yoda, any response?
No, I enjoy your space for this reason, that I can have a forum where I can agree to disagree with Omar. This is great. I think the truth will be somewhere in the middle, but that's why they're coffee.
Nice. Wessex, did you have it? Okay.
Yeah, just a question for Yoda. Yoda, how do you address, out of curiosity, how do you address the manufacturing point that Omar made? I mean, do you have different thoughts regarding availability of this robotaxi product?
Yeah, that was a little bit of surprise because I thought they're changing their strategy to be using existing lines, and it won't be full on unboxing methodology. So I'm not sure what's potentially stopping Tesla from um, initiating the production of the robotaxi on an existing line. Let's say close to 8.8, if not already. Why do they need to wait for a year? That part I'm not too sure.
Omar, then Jimmy.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Omar?
So they mentioned that the compact model and that they were going to be making more affordable models on the same production line as the Model 3 and Y. Those were previously supposed to be made on the unboxed process. So now the driverless robotaxi is the only vehicle that's using the unboxed process. So it's really the thing keeping this unboxed line alive, right? And they want something to try and build using this unboxed process. I think it's kind of a lower risk vehicle to build, given that they don't need as high volume and the software needs some time before it can really get to a stage where it can address a meaningful segment of the market and they need more production volume. So that's going to be using the unboxed process, which the industry is looking really close at. And the more affordable models are going to be built on the existing production line.
Wessex.
Omar, what do you think it is that would not delay, but take an additional year and a half for the unbox process to, start production, why can't we accelerate that?
I mean, I think like 1 year is like a pretty aggressive timeline, honestly. Like the software probably needs more time than that to evolve. So I see that as a pretty aggressive timeline, end of 2025, 2026.
Yeah. Let's grab the question from Baby Eli real quick. Baby Eli?
Hey, I was wondering if you guys have any thoughts about the Model Y and the updated Model Y. I was tempted to get the Model Y last month with the 0.99, but I was sort of hesitant, thinking maybe next year if they refresh it, maybe I get that, or maybe like towards the end of the year, maybe they need to get rid of their old Model Y stock. So do you guys have any thoughts on someone getting their first Tesla Model Y this year or next year, or any thoughts on how I should approach it? Thanks.
Yoda?
So, oh yeah.
Yeah, Omar, go ahead first and then Yoda.
So Tesla has communicated internally to their employees that there isn't going to be any new Model Y. I'm talking about the upgraded Model Y with most of the stuff the Model 3 has until 2025. So if you're looking to buy now, it's going to be at least 6 months. So up to you to decide. They are always improving the products. They're making them better. They're putting the latest and greatest technology with their motors and batteries and everything in the car. But obviously, some of the big user-facing changes like ambient lights, the screen in the rear, ventilated seats, you're not going to be able to get those on a Model Y until next year. Possibly, maybe we see it launch in China a little bit before that, but it's looking like 2025 at the earliest for the US and not necessarily Q1. So if you need a car now, go ahead and get the Model Y. It's a great car today. If you can wait a little bit, then they're probably going to do that upgraded Model Y next year.
Yoda?
Yeah, just to add to that, baby Eli. I take it you don't want the Model 3 form factor. Otherwise, obviously, Highland would be the obvious choice. But if you're looking for Model Y, the way to think about it is that the software updates and improvements over time is greatly more important and more so felt by you than the hardware changes, if you will, over the next few years. It's just that we've been conditioned by traditional automakers that it's a bad idea to, if you get a car and it refreshes next year from a look and, physical look and feel perspective. I think as a Tesla owner, you'll find that regardless of the form factor changes, the software is it's going to yield great benefits over the years, and you're going to be keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. The other thing to think about the design is that much like a 911, every iteration of the 911 since the 60s sort of looks good. And I think that's the way with the Tesla designs, is that they're classics. And so, I don't feel disadvantaged, driving the original Model 3, let's say. It looks, great, and it stands up against the new form factor. Omar might disagree with that, but
Grant?
I was gonna ask if there's anything to the rumors that there's going to be a new Model Y unveiled in production in August as a part of the robotaxi unveil.
Omar?
No, this is really going to be focused on the robotaxi. The new Model Y will probably launch in 2025, and there probably won't be an official unveil for it. They'll just kind of soft launch it, maybe have a few journalists over like they did with the Model 3.
Great. Half-hour warning, 30-minute warning. We have 30 minutes, after which there's going to be a 10-20-minute after party where we summarize, get an update on market data, and answer questions. For patrons, the link is at the top of our screens. Sawyer says Tesla Charging Program Manager Business Development Lead, TJ Connolly, was recently asked to return to Tesla charging team. Quote, I assure you that the EV charging industry is okay. Tesla will continue to lead and inspire while providing the best customer experience with our best-in-class products and support. He says, 2 weeks ago, I was asked to return to the Tesla charging team. So I guess this is is this the second person that we know of that was asked to return, Omar?
Yeah, they've been rebuilding the team. Some new hires, but also some of the existing hires that they felt were top notch are also being brought back.
Okay, great. Let me see if there's any other news where we're going to talk about. Toyota apologized for cheating on vehicle tests. Halts production of 3 models. W6.
Yeah, this question for Omar. Omar, we're trying to square something. In the Q1 earnings call, I believe Elon said more affordable models, and I Googled this a second ago, so I've got a little cheat sheet in front of me, but more affordable models are coming early 2025 or sooner. So seems like something's coming out later this year, wouldn't you think?
You can always expect Elon to be a little aggressive. He tends to set deadlines that are so tight they're almost impossible to meet, if not impossible to meet. And he believes that actually gets people to deliver something faster. So I would maybe think 2025 we could see something. And from what I hear, it's not going to hit the 25K price point exactly, but something close to the 30K range, which would qualify for the point of sale credit and get down to, actually less than 25K if you qualify for the credit. That's kind of what they're shooting for now. It's something that can be made on the existing 3 and Y production line. From what I hear, think a smaller Model Y, but it's going to have steer by wire. It's going to have these new motors that don't use any rare earths, and it's going to have a structural battery pack and use LFP exclusively, but still get pretty good range. From what I hear, these are all kind of rumors. Obviously, things are subject to change. But yeah, think of a smaller, cheaper Model Y. That's what I hear.
Nick.
So the Roadster, the new Roadster, was announced in 2017, and we're being told that it should or could roll out next year in 2025. On the rollout of the Robo taxi, I know Omar, you're mentioning 2025, 2026. Is that a realistic expectation based off of the time between the Roadster announcement and when it's going to be rolled out? And with it having autonomous, being fully autonomous without a steering wheel and stuff like that, I mean, is there a realistic time frame to have this rolled out in the next 2 years? Thanks.
Yeah, you gotta when these predictions are made and production plans are made, you gotta kind of separate them into 2 buckets, or really ask the question first: is this product or service critical for the mission? And Roadster is not critical for the mission, and so it goes on the back burner. So you can expect some delays in that situation. Whereas a robotaxi is very critical to the mission. So I think it's going to be prioritized. However, like Omar mentioned earlier, the software may need some time to mature. Omar, what do you think?
I mean, there's almost no connection between the Robotaxi and the Roadster. The Roadster is going to be made in Fremont. It's a very low volume vehicle. So if you're making only a few vehicles, it's easy. The hard part is making a lot of them. So Roadster they can build is mostly, a matter of finishing all the engineering and design work, making sure it's safe, 0 to 60, 1.1 seconds. They've got the SpaceX cold gas thrusters. So that's being handled by a team in California. The Robotaxi is going to be produced in Gigafactory, Texas. So it's a separate team in Texas. And then obviously the software component of the Robotaxis, which is really the big sort of question mark, I think, for people in terms of whether they'll be able to launch is very different than, vehicle production planning. So, but you look at other services, you look at Waymo, what they've been able to do, you look forward a few years, it seems like this is becoming more and more realistic. We're gaining more experience operating these services at scale. So you can't say for sure whether the software is really going to be ready in 2 years. But I think that it probably will be when you look at where the software is today and what Waymo's doing in LA and San Francisco today. So who knows whether these timelines will be hit? They probably will be missed a little bit. The question is just, is it a few months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? And no one can really predict that, obviously.
Amy.
Hi, thank you, you guys. I have something really important I need to tell you guys and let you guys know. I'm really trying to be a benefit, and I'm so happy that Giga Texas is here. It's changing lives of people that I grew up with and people that are from a little town, Taylor, Texas, that I grew up in. And while there's CHIPS funding available, I'm trying to get $1 billion park built for half the price. And I love your group because every time I stop by, you guys are evaluating the money, the whole situation, what makes sense.
All right. Thank you,
And
Amy.
I-
Amy,
I
first-time
mean-
speakers are limited to asking questions, and questions should have 10 words or fewer, and they should start with a question word. Grant.
Are people concerned that 12.4 isn't released because it's regression or not going well?
Well, I think it sounds like they maybe needed some more training. It wasn't really ready to go out. There were some issues with it. So these kinds of things do tend to happen. I guess it is more concerning the longer it takes. But if we see employees get it 11.4.1 and customers get it this week, then I'm not too concerned.
Will you be concerned if they don't get it this week? I mean,
the more time it takes,
I don't really know.
The more time it takes, the more concerning it is. But
Just ask
delays
it,
are
ask
normal.
it the following way. Ask it the following way. What would make you start concerning about Tesla's FSD efforts somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, if there was no update for 3 months or 2 months, that would be concerning.
There you go, Grant. I mean, when they first started talking about 12.4, I said, I think 12.4 is going to be more of a Q3 story. And 12.5 is going to be more of a Q4 story.
Major updates always take time.
Yeah, it's going to take time to, they have a very extensive process of making sure it's safe to roll out, and they do it in stages. Very carefully.
And they can't afford to fuck up, especially not when they're
Exactly.
taking away the nag.
Exactly. Yeah, this is a very major update. So I'm looking forward to it. And in the meantime, people are really enjoying 12.3.6. Like it's not like the current version is. It's not like the current version is bad. So, Grant.
I'm not an expert on the timing, but wasn't there a commitment that this was going to be every 2 weeks now because the pace of development was accelerating, or am I getting mixed up?
Well, that's not like sometimes people bring in what they hear outside of the space into here as if we said it here. We said many times here when those claims were being made, the pace of updates does not reflect pace of progress. So, you're making a strawman argument. Machine.
Okay.
Machine. You know what? I'm gonna leave machine to the last for. You're gonna leave the best to the last. Jesus.
Hey, Machine, I have a question. Do people put too much emphasis on driving when you have FSD and it's driving you around? I mean, I've only had it for a week and I love it.
Dude, Machine right now thinks he's in listening mode. I guarantee you. Because he wasn't listening earlier. I sent him an invite. He probably left and came back. And when that happens, it automatically takes you to the speaker board. And he's like, not even, there you go. He moved to listener. Anyway.
Well, Omar, then that question to you. Like, do people put too much emphasis on driving when they won't even be driving in the future?
What do you mean? Do people put too much emphasis on driving?
Well, I think how the car works and how you drive it, like that's the big thing with me. I don't think about driving anymore because I'm just using my FSD.
Yeah, I mean, it may change the things that people look for in cars. So, I mean, overall, look, in October, it's going to be 4 years since I've been using the software. In 4 years, not one software update showed up on time. Not even one. Okay. Compared to when Elon tweeted that it would arrive. So that's just Elon. You can criticize him for it. But again, what other product can I buy where the CEO is making accurate time estimates? There is nothing else. So this is what we have. And this is just the nature of the thing. If it's not safe, you can't release it. You can't say, oh, today is the deadline. Let's put out a piece of software that could crash a car, right? So this is just the nature of this. You're bound to be disappointed. And over time, you just realize, okay, sometimes there's delays. Like I said, if it's an extremely long delay, then that's a different thing. But there are people who are just trying to scare you. Every single thing that happens is a disaster, right? But the company just keeps failing upwards somehow, expanding the scale, doing better and better. How many times over the years did we hear that they've hit a wall or this is it or they can't solve it? And they were just wrong time and time again. So I don't think we need to address that too much. I did see an interesting note from Piper Sandler that they just put out about the vote. And, it's really kind of reinforcing my sense that there's a big overhang on this stock. I think people are really interested in the AI side of the story, but there's a lot of uncertainty around this vote. And I think people are being really cautious ahead of it. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are shorting the stock or buying puts into it. And yeah, Piper Sandler had some interesting thoughts on the subject.
Grant.
I just wanted to compliment Omar on the language that every single thing is a disaster and the business keeps failing upwards somehow. I know that wasn't what you were saying, but that was a nice crystallization of how I feel. I am curious. Oh, sorry.
I forgive you. Tesla just posted software update 2024.20 rolling out now. Highlights headlights adapt for curves, adaptive headlight improvements, beach buggy supercharger racing, hot weather improvements. All right. Let's see what else.
Ooh, adaptive headlights for the US. Did you read this Piper Sandler note that I commented with?
No, I don't usually read sell-side analyst notes. What does it say?
Well, it's just kind of interesting to hear how they're thinking. So it just says, let's see. It says, our recent Tesla conversations have not focused on modeling. This is because in the immediate term, everyone seems focused on the shareholder meeting on June 13th. If shareholders vote in favor of the board's recommendations, we think Tesla will trade sideways at worst. If the inverse occurs, then we think that the stock price would fall. But with over 40% retail ownerships and a few institutions in both the yay and nay camps, we're not sure what will happen. To control risk, we'd be tactically equal weight ahead of the vote. Looking beyond June, we think a rising focus on AI will support an overweight rating. In the meantime, we're cutting our forecast for deliveries, but boosting the outlook for margins. These changes offset others, and our price target remains at 205.
Okay. Sawyer tweeted, Tesla's board of directors has released a new 4-page letter to shareholders talking about ISS. Quote, the 2018 Performance Award was worth noting to Elon when it was awarded. Elon only benefited if it drove increased performance and stockholders benefited. The 2018 Performance Award was put in place to retain and motivate Elon, and Elon's only opportunity to receive any compensation for his work would come from delivering transformative growth and extraordinary value to stockholders over a 10-year period. He did it in 6 years. So I guess ISS recommended a 4 vote for proposal 3. Is that right, Omar? So they do support moving to Texas. That's interesting.
They've recommended it, as has Glass Lewis for other companies.
Grant?
Yeah, I'm sorry if this comes across as negative. The question I wanted to ask earlier was, I feel like there's some risk with V12.4 getting delayed, that they are going into the robotaxi unveil with more or less the same, FSD capabilities that they have today, which I think there's a risk that they end up looking kind of silly. I mean, it's a good piece of software, but I just don't think it's really robotaxi ready. The longer this drags on and the less progress they make before that date, the more I think that's a risk.
Well, I think you're kind of mistaken. It's not like they haven't been developing 12.4 and 12.5 internally and running it on thousands of employee cars. They just haven't released it to customers. So there's a difference between a software version existing and actually passing validation and being ready to release across North America. So I wouldn't confuse it with, if they're not sending out an update, they're not making out any progress. With any major update, like with the move from version 11 to version 12, you have a period where it makes more sense to keep people on the older version that's already validated than the new version that has some new capabilities, but also needs some validation and bug fixes. And this is a pretty normal part of the process. So I would caution against listening to the people who are telling you you need to panic about this. Most of them are short sellers, right? And they never predicted that the software would get this good. So now they know that it's hit a wall. Sure, it has. That's not what I've heard from the employees who are testing 12.4 right now.
Okay, good. I'm looking at the Piper Sandler's forecast for revenue. So they believe 2024 revenue would be very similar to 2023. And 2025 will be about 10% more. Okay. And then earnings per share growth. They expect a dip this year and about 25% growth next year on EPS. Based on a 20-year DCF. Wow. 5% of analysts can see out 20 years, apparently. How about that? Weighted average cost of capital, 13.6%. Interesting. Market cap $620 billion. How did they get that number? I wonder if they're using diluted shares here. Risks to achievement, production delays, failure to meet customer expectations, product defects and recalls, supply chain disruptions, slow adoption of EVs. Okay. Modestly reducing forecast for both 2024, 2025. Market share has fallen in US and EU, largely due to shutdowns in Q1. Deliveries should rise quarter to quarter through Q4, but after that, we're unsure if growth is a priority. Well, you have it in your 2025 estimate, a 10% assumption. Our guarded delivery outlook may prove overdone, pending details from an event on 8/8. Prices and wait times have stabilized. Okay. Lincoln's coming up. 5-minute warning, and then we're going to have a quick after party at Patreon. The link is at the top of our screens. Lincoln, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Yamin. You said you're saving the best for last. Just wanted to get up here and get ready to go.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great. I'm heading back to work after some lunch, and it's interesting. I'm in the left lane, 4-lane road, and there's a middle lane, right? And I'm on FSD, and the suicide lane in the middle. Someone was pulling out into that to go the same direction as me. And it was cool because my car just kind of like kept going the same speed and just moved over. Didn't put the blinker on because it didn't go to the right lane, but it moved over in the other lane a little bit just to give that person room, just in case they were going to go out in front of me. And I just think it's interesting because in the, 6 months ago, my car would have just like slammed the brakes or something. So it's really nice and smooth, and even like, and it's cool too because it was able to look to my right and make sure no one was there, right, and see this car coming. And yeah, it was really neat. I don't know. It's just a sign of things to come.
Omar, we have a question in the replies from DGM. He still thinks Tesla might push the idea that this vehicle will be able to host third-party compute and sensors. What do you think?
Nope. They already said it's a pure vision robotaxi.
Okay. Niranga asks, is there a way to determine which vehicles have matrix headlights? Does it show on their specs in the app?
If you do a light show, the cars with matrix headlights will write Tesla using the front headlights on the wall. So park close to a wall and try it. And if you see the word Tesla written with the headlights, you got the matrix headlights.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the lights are essentially like a display, and they can turn on and off individual pixels to automatically not shine light in people's face. It's super cool.
Marty T says in the replies, Omar, that back to our Model S resale value discussion, CarMax gave him $5,000 more, so you might want to back check with
Yeah,
them.
I've got an appointment at CarMax.
Okay.
So I'm probably just going to take it to them and then they'll give me a check and I'll go give it to Tesla.
Yeah. Yeah, by the way, if people in the audience, they check their vehicles trade-in values every now and then, you're welcome to come up and let us know if there's a material change. So Omar, a couple of weeks ago, checked when he was ordering his new Model 3. And today he was given a $5,000 lower trade-in value than before. So that has some information value when it comes to Model S resale prices.
Yeah, it could possibly be the Cybertruck effect. Maybe less people, like your Model S and X buyers, they're also Foundation Series buyers. Like a lot of these people were the people who bought the Tesla when it was new, when very few people had ever had a Tesla before. The Model S and X were the first cars, and they're exactly in the price range of the Cybertruck, which is now an even more premium car, right? The Model S starts in the 70K range. You can get the Model X for 80K and get a tax credit, but the Cybertruck's in the 100K range. So it kind of explains the grouping they've done in their deliveries. Model S and X and Cybertruck are now grouped under other vehicles. So they can sort of mask what looks like a little bit of a cannibalization of the S and X by the Cybertruck. So really, I think they need to show the S and X a little bit of love, or it kind of just calls the future of the program into question. And I'd like to see them continue making the cars and have them be really great cars, and still win some buyers even as they introduce new vehicles like the more affordable models of the Cybertruck. I mean, think about next year when the Cybertruck starts at 60K. The cannibalization is going to be even worse then.
Do you see Tesla stopping production of SX?
I hope not. What I'd like to see them do is continue to make them really great. Even, smoother suspension than the EQS, the latest features, but it would be purely for sentimental reasons and just to have a more round product mix. It doesn't really make financial sense. The money this company is making is not coming from the S and X. It's coming from the 3 and Y and the Cybertruck. And the S and X are really just there for historical reasons, really. But there are some people who want them a bigger car. They're really nice cars, but it's just not where the growth engine of the company is.
Yeah. Adopt dogs and cats or Teslas? We have 1 minute. What's your question?
Keep throwing cats. Hey, yeah, to that point directly, I would be in favor of SNX future. I was one of those old-time S buyers from 2017. The only problem is I have a and the aluminum body. If they switched to
But your connection is really bad. We're going to move on. We have limited time anyway. We're going to continue with that tomorrow. Thank you very much, everybody. And I'm jumping onto Patreon for the after party. Talk to you all tomorrow. Take care.